She was a lady of maps and flowers, bound for a wedding in San Francisco. He was a man of stone and shadow, bound by a law she could not understand. When a dust storm swept Elara Higgins off the map, it threw her into a world hidden for 1,000 years. She was lost, dehydrated, and desperate. But what she stumbled upon in that secret canyon, a sacred, naked rider in a ritual of fire and water, would cost her more than her bearings. It would cost her her name, her future, and her freedom. Because in the eyes of his people, she had seen the forbidden, and the man she saw, Kale of the Echo Canyon, delivered a sentence that changed her world. You saw me ride. Now, by my people's law, you belong to me. The Arizona Territory, 1878, was not a map of lines and towns. It was a map of thirst, heat, and survival. Elara Higgins, unfortunately, had proven adept at reading only the first two. Her lips were cracked, her fine Bostonian dress was reduced to a dun-colored rag, and her horse, Professor, a gentle gelding, wholly unsuited for this god-forsaken landscape, had succumbed 3 hours ago. The wagon train, led by the pragmatic but ultimately fallible Captain Thorne, had vanished 2 days prior in a dust storm that had tasted like pulverized bone. Elara was alone. She clutched the silver locket at her throat, a gift from Silas Croft, her fiancé. The man who was, at this very moment, likely sipping cool lemonade in a San Francisco hotel, waiting for the arrival of his bride. He was a man of numbers, a railroad surveyor whose intellect she had always admired. He would have calculated the odds of her survival by now. They would not be good. "Water," she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. She was a botanist by hobby, a woman of science. She knew the signs, the dizziness, the dark ring closing in on her vision. She had, perhaps, 1 more hour of coherent movement before the desert claimed her. She had been following a high-sided rock wall for the last mile, a towering monolith of red sandstone that offered a sliver of shade. It was a desperate gamble. The wall ended in a sheer cliff or, God willing, an alcove, a spring, a miracle. The wall did end, but it didn't. It folded in on itself, creating a fissure so narrow she almost missed it. It was a slot canyon, barely shoulder width, disappearing into cool, blue darkness. Hope, sharp and painful, lanced through her. She slipped into the crack. The temperature dropped 20 degrees. The world went from a sun-bleached roar to a hushed, reverent silence. The walls were smooth, sculpted by millennia of flash floods. She walked, then stumbled, her worn boots slipping on the polished stone. The canyon twisted, turned, then opened up. Elara gasped. It was a place that shouldn't exist, a perfect circle of high canyon, open to the sky, with a waterfall spilling from a hole in the rock face above, feeding a pool of water so clear and turquoise it looked like a patch of fallen sky. Ferns and moss clung to the damp walls. She wept, tears of sheer, agonizing relief, and half ran, half fell towards the pool. She plunged her hands in, bringing the life-giving water to her mouth, heedless of anything else. Only when her thirst was slaked, when the world stopped spinning, did she lift her head. And that's when she saw him. He was not in the pool. He was above it, on a ledge near the waterfall's source, beside a magnificent Appaloosa horse. He was a man, but unlike any she had ever seen. He was tall, his skin the color of burnished copper, his black hair falling to his waist. He was adorned, not clothed. Streaks of white and blue clay painted his chest and face in symbols she couldn't understand, and he was, as the title of a forbidden penny dreadful might scream, completely naked. Elara froze, her mind, trained in societal etiquette, screaming, "Turn away!" But her body, trained in survival, recognized him as a potential threat. He didn't seem to see her. He was in a trance, his head tilted back, chanting a low, guttural song that seemed to vibrate in the stones. He mounted the Appaloosa in a single, fluid motion. Then he did the impossible. He kicked the horse's flanks, and the animal leapt, riding directly through the waterfall, disappearing into a dark cavern hidden behind it. Ilara's scientific mind processed it. Sacred space. Ritual. Hidden cave. Her panicked mind processed it. Magic. Savage. Run. She scrambled to her feet, backing away. She slipped on the wet stone, her boot making a sharp scraping sound that echoed in the amphitheater like a gunshot. The chanting stopped. For a terrible, stretched second, there was only the sound of the waterfall. Then a shadow emerged from the water. It was him, on his horse, the water sluicing from his painted skin. He was no longer in a trance. His eyes, black and piercing, locked onto hers. She had never seen such fury. It wasn't the anger of modesty. It was the anger of sacrilege. He urged his horse forward, and it descended a hidden, narrow path, landing on the pool's edge with a soft splash. He was before her in seconds. He was taller than she'd imagined, radiating a heat that had nothing to do with the sun. Ilara shrank back, holding up her hands. "Please. I meant no harm. I was lost. I just needed water." He dismounted, and she realized he was not alone. From the shadows of the canyon entrance, 3 other men, similarly attired but armed with bows and obsidian-tipped spears, emerged. They circled her. The leader, the rider, stopped 5 feet from her. He looked at her, his gaze traveling from her torn dress to her terrified, blue eyes. He spoke, not to her, but to the oldest of the other men. His language was all clicks and soft, flowing vowels. The old man nodded grimly. The rider turned his gaze back to Ilara. He took a breath, and when he spoke, it was in perfect, unaccented English, but with a cadence that felt ancient. "You have seen what is not for you. You have seen the solstice ride." I didn't know," Ilara stammered. "I'll leave. I'll say nothing. I swear on my life." The man's lip curled, not in a smile, but in a sneer of bitter irony. "You just did." He stepped closer, and the sheer, intimidating power of him made her stumble back against the cold rock. "You saw me ride. You saw the renewal. You have defiled the sacred pool with your outside eyes." He pointed a finger, not at her heart, but at her head. "By the law of the Echo Canyon people, your shadow is now bound to this place. You belong to the canyon, and the canyon has given you to me." Ilara's mind reeled. "Belong to you? That's absurd. That's barbaric. I am a citizen of the United States. I am betrothed. My name is Ilara Higgins." The man she would come to know as Cale showed no flicker of interest. "Your name is outsider. Your name is witness. The laws of your United States do not echo here. Here, only the rock and the water speak, and they have spoken your fate." He motioned to the other 2. They moved forward. Ilara's brief surge of defiance collapsed back into terror. She looked for an escape. There was none. She was in a stone bowl, and they were the only way out. "Please," she begged, looking at Kyle. "I don't understand this law. I am not an object to be given." "It is not a law of possession," Kyle said, his voice cold as the shaded stone. "It is a law of balance. You took a secret. Now your life is the price to keep it." He gestured, and one of the men grabbed her arm. It was not rough, but it was inescapable. They led her back through the slot canyon, but not the way she had come. They took a side passage, a tunnel that went up into the rock. It was a staircase, carved by hands long dead. She was taken not to a collection of tippies or dirty hovels as she might have imagined, but to a city. A city inside the canyon walls. It was a pueblo, a staggering work of architecture, built into a massive cliffside alcove. 3-story adobe dwellings, connected by ladders and narrow walkways, housed a people she had never known existed. Children stopped their play to stare. Women, dressed in simple woven cotton dresses, paused their work of grinding maize or weaving baskets, their faces a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. This was a world in miniature, hidden from the encroaching 19th century. They brought her to the center of the main plaza, before the largest structure, a circular kiva built half underground. An old man emerged, his face a road map of wrinkles, his eyes clouded with cataracts, but missing nothing. He wore a mantle of owl feathers. This, Elara sensed, was the true power. "This is Malachi, our lawkeeper," Kyle said, his voice flat. He spoke to Malachi in their tongue, his words rapid and sharp. Elara watched, her fate being decided in a language she could not comprehend. Malachi looked at her, his cloudy eyes seeming to pierce her soul. He spoke, and his voice was like rocks grinding together. Kyle translated, his face grim. "Malachi says the law is clear. The law of witness. You have seen a holy man in his moment of communion with the Sky Father. You have broken the sacred circle." "But it was an accident," Elara cried. "Accidents are how the gods change the world," Kyle retorted. "Malachi says the law has 2 paths. First, your silence, which means your death." Elara's blood ran cold. "The second path," Kyle continued, "is integration. You cannot leave. You cannot speak to your world ever again. You are given to the one you witnessed, to be his charge, his shadow. He is responsible for your silence, your integration, or your punishment. Your old life is dead." Elara looked at Kyle, this man who had been riding naked in a waterfall an hour ago. "Given to you." "My honor was stained by your eyes," Kyle said, his jaw tightening. "My solstice ride, a ritual to prove my worthiness to Led, was broken. Now, my test is not to commune with the spirits. It is to tame the outsider, to make you one of us, or to ensure you are silenced forever." Malachi spoke again, a final, harsh command. "You will be taken to my family's dwelling," Kale translated. "You will be stripped of those rags. You will be cleansed. And you will learn. And if I refuse," Elara said, her chin trembling but high. Kyle's gaze was utterly without pity. "Then Malachi will choose the first path for you, and the canyon will drink your blood before the sun sets." "I have a name," she whispered, a last act of defiance. "Elara Higgins." "No," Kyle said, turning to walk away. "Your name is what we call you, and for now, you are Anakite." He paused at the door of his dwelling. "It means the unwanted echo." The next weeks were a blur of humiliation, education, and crushing labor. Elara was given over to Kale's mother, Tala, a woman with a spine of iron and eyes that held a universe of unspoken grief. Tala, Elara learned, had lost her own daughter to the river years ago. She did not look upon Elara as a replacement, but as a burden. Elara's fine Boston dress was taken, along with her boots, and most painfully, her locket. The silver circle with Silas's miniature portrait was held up by Malachi, declared a metal curse, and locked away in the kiva. She was given the simple buckskin leggings and tunic of a canyon woman. The moccasins were soft, but her feet, used to heeled boots, ached. Her hands, used to delicate illustration and the turning of pages, were now raw and blistered. Her first task, assigned by Tala, was to grind corn. It was not a simple chore. It was an art and a torture. She was given a metate, a sloped, grinding stone, and a mano, the smaller stone she held. For hours she knelt, rocking back and forth, trying to turn the hard, dry kernels into fine flour. Her back screamed. The other women, working nearby, laughed softly at her clumsy, ineffective motions. "You push like a child," Tala said, her English as clear as Kyle's. She came over, shoved Ilara's hands aside, and demonstrated. It was not a pushing motion, but a rocking, a rolling of the shoulders, using the body's full weight. "The stone must do the work. You are just the heart, making it beat." Ilara tried again, mimicking the motion. It was still wrong. Kyle watched her, often. He was a constant, looming presence. He was not cruel. In fact, he was infuriatingly impersonal. He would watch her fail to light a fire with a fire stick, watch her recoil from the taste of stewed rabbit, watch her weep in frustration as she tried to weave a basket, the reeds snapping in her trembling fingers. "You fight the canyon," he told her one evening, as she sat nursing her bleeding palms. "I am not fighting," she spat. "I am failing." "You are fighting," he insisted, hunkering down beside her. "You fight the corn. You fight the reeds. You fight the stone. You think them beneath you. You think we are beneath you." "I do not." "Yes. You wait for your Mr. Silas," he said, and the use of her fiancé's name was a physical blow. "You think this is a dream, a play. You think you will wake up. You think you are still Ilara Higgins." "I am Ilara Higgins," she cried, jumping to her feet. "Ilara Higgins is a ghost," Kyle said, standing to his full height, eclipsing the firelight. "She is a weak, soft thing who would have died by the pool if I hadn't found her. She is dead. Only Anakite is here, and Anakite must learn to be useful, or Malachi will feed her to the crows." His words were brutal, but they were a turning point. Ilara realized he was right. She had been waiting for rescue. She had been treating this as a temporary nightmare. That night, she stopped weeping. The next morning, she was at the grinding stone before the sun rose. She watched Tala's hands. She watched her shoulders. She put her entire, agonizing weight into the mano, and she felt, for the first time, the corn break. It was not a victory, but it was a start. She began to learn. Her mind, the scientific, botanist's mind, began to observe. She learned which plants were for headaches, willow bark, and which were for fever, a bitter root Tala called osha. She learned the language, not just the words, but the meaning. They had no word for possession. The word Kyle had used, the one that meant belong to, was the same word they used for a child belonging to a mother, or a river belonging to the canyon. It meant a part of, not owned by. This revelation struck her. "You belong to me" was not a statement of ownership. It was a statement of connection, a statement of fate. This did not make her a happier prisoner, but it made her a more intelligent one. Her primary antagonist was not Kyle, but another warrior named Rorik. Rorik was Kyle's shadow in a different way. He had also sought the honor of the solstice ride. He was strong, loud, and he saw Kyle's taming of Ilara as a sign of weakness. "The outsider softens him," Malachi, Rorik would say, loud enough for all to hear. "He should have let you take her throat. Now he is a nursemaid to a white eyes." Rorik went out of his way to torment her. He would kick over the pot of water she had just spent an hour hauling from the pool. He would accidentally trip her on the walkways. One day, he cornered her as she was gathering herbs near the canyon's hidden entrance. "You are bad luck, White Eyes," he growled, grabbing her arm. "You stink of your outside world. Let me go. Elara said, her voice steady, though her heart hammered. Or what? Your nursemaid Kale will save you. He is weak. His magic is gone. You stole it. Rorik's eyes were dark with a mixture of superstition and base desire. He leaned in. Perhaps I will show you what a real canyon man is. I would not do that, Rorik. Kyle's voice came from the rocks above. He dropped down, silent as a mountain cat. He wasn't even breathing hard. Rorik instantly released Elara, his hand flying to the knife at his belt. I was just teaching the Anakite her place. Her place is with my mother, Kyle said, his voice dangerously quiet. Her place is not under your heavy hands. She is your burden, Rorik spat, a burden that should have been discarded. She is my responsibility, Kyle corrected him, taking a step closer. The two men were matched in height and build, but Kyle was a coiled spring, and Rorik was a blunt instrument. My responsibility, my honor. Touch her again, and you and I will have a conversation with knives, and Malachi will not be here to stop it. Rorik, for all his bluster, was a coward. He knew he could not beat Kale in a fair fight. He sneered, "You waste your honor on a ghost," and stalked away. Elara was shaking. She expected Kale to be angry with her, to scold her for being alone. Instead, he turned to her, his face unreadable. Your arm. He gently took her arm where Rorik had grabbed her. Dark bruises were already forming. His thumb, calloused and warm, traced the edge of the marks. It was the first time he had touched her with anything other than impersonal correction. He frightens me, she admitted in a small voice. He frightens the rocks, Kyle said. He is a man of loud thunder and no rain. But he is right about one thing. What? You are a ghost, Kyle said, his eyes meeting hers. You walk here, you eat our food, you wear our clothes. But you are not here. Your spirit is still with him. Silas. Elara snatched her arm back. You have no right to speak his name. I have every right, Kyle said, his voice hardening again. He is the man you are trying to return to. He is the reason you would betray us. I would not betray you. If I opened the path and pointed you to your San Francisco, would you not run? He challenged. Elara's silence was her answer. Yes, Kyle said, a deep sadness in his voice. You would run, and you would take the secret of this place with you, and he would come back, with men, with rifles, with railroads. Elara looked at him, shocked at his understanding of the outside world. We are not fools, Elara Higgins, Kyle said, using her name for the first time. It was a slap. We see the smoke on the horizon. We find the iron spikes driven into the earth. Your people are a sickness spreading, and you are a germ. Rorik is right. You are bad luck. The question is, are you a poison I can cure, or one I must cut out? He left her there, alone, the herbs forgotten. And for the first time, Elara felt a sliver of doubt, not about her captivity, but about her civilized world. Elara endured for another month. She was no longer Elara Higgins, the delicate botanist. She was Anakite, a woman whose hands were hard, whose skin was brown, and whose eyes were sharp. She could grind a week's worth of corn in a morning, haul 2 water pots without spilling, and she could, finally, speak the canyon tongue well enough to be understood. She had also been mapping the city, the tunnels, the guard rotations. Not for betrayal, she told herself. For escape. She still believed in Silas. She believed in the world of law and order. This, all of this, was an aberration. Kyle's words about sickness were the paranoid rantings of a savage, she told herself. Her chance came during the harvest moon. It was a great festival, and for the first time, Malachi had ordered the ceremonial kiva to be filled with a potent, smoky herb that induced a light trance. The entire village, even the guards, would be distracted. She had been hoarding a small gourd of water, a length of dried jerky, a small, sharp obsidian knife she had stolen from Tala's weaving tools. As the village disappeared into the kiva, as the drums began their monotonous, hypnotic beat, Elara slipped into the shadows. She knew the tunnels now. She knew the one Kyle's ancestors had used to escape a long-forgotten enemy. It led, not out the main slot canyon, but up, to a high ledge that overlooked the vast desert. She climbed for an hour, her body, now strong and sure-footed, not failing her. She emerged, panting, into the bright moonlight. The desert stretched before her, a silver sea. She was free. She wept, a short, sharp sob of triumph. She looked at the stars, trying to find the North Star to get her bearings. She would walk east. She knew the railroad survey maps. She knew Silas's camp was, or was supposed to be, about 40 miles east. She ran. She scrambled down the rock face, tearing her leggings, but she didn't care. She ran for 6 hours. The moon set, and the sun began to rise, painting the sky in agonizing shades of orange and pink. She was dehydrated, exhausted, but triumphant. She crested a high dune, expecting to see the flatlands. She stopped dead. Below her, not 5 miles away, was the hidden canyon, the city of stone, exactly where she had left it. She had been walking in a perfect, desperate circle. The desert, the invisible map, had defeated her. She collapsed, weeping in pure despair. "It is a hard land to read for an outsider," she gasped, scrambling up. Kyle was sitting on a rock not 20 feet away, eating a piece of dried fruit. His Appaloosa grazed nearby. He wasn't even armed. You followed me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I did not," Kyle said, tossing her a small water skin. "I waited. I knew where you would go. This is the Liar's Ridge. It looks like it leads away, but it always turns you back. Our ancestors built it as a trap." You let me? I let you choose," Kyle said, his face hard to read in the dawn light. "And you chose your old life. You chose to betray us." "I did not. I was—" She had no words. He was right. "It does not matter," Kyle said, standing. "Your choice is made. Now Malachi will have his way. The second path has failed." "No," Elara cried. "Please, Kyle. I was afraid. I miss my life. I miss him." "Him," Kyle scoffed. He grabbed her arm, but this time it was rough. He pulled her to her feet. "Come, we must return before the village wakes." "No, please, I won't do it again. I swear." "Silence!" he snapped. He froze, his head tilted, his hand grabbing his horse's muzzle. "Be still." "What?" "Smoke," he whispered, pointing. "And not our smoke." He pulled her behind the rocks. He crept to the ridgeline, and Elara, her heart pounding for a different reason, followed. They looked down. In the valley, not half a mile from the secret entrance to the slot canyon, was a camp. Tents, mules, and men. White men. There were about a dozen of them, rough-looking men with rifles and picks, prospectors, and in the center, standing over a table, were 2 men dressed in finer clothes. One was a thick, older man with a grey beard, smoking a cigar. The other— Elara's breath caught in her chest. It was impossible. "Silas," she breathed. It was him. Silas Croft. Her fiancé. He was not in San Francisco. He was here. But her joy of recognition died in her throat. She was close enough to see his face. It was not the kind, intellectual face she remembered. It was hard, greedy, and excited. He was talking to the older man, his voice carrying on the clear morning air. The map is right, Mr. Alistair Blackwood, Silas was saying, his voice eager. My earlier surveys, the ones I was doing for the railroad, I found traces of silver all through these canyons. The company didn't want to follow up, said it was too remote. But we know better, don't we? Mr. Blackwood laughed, a harsh, barking sound. That we do, Croft. That we do. And the rumors of those hidden folk, the ones the local Apache are so scared of. Ghost stories, Silas said, waving a dismissive hand. Probably just a few stragglers. If we find any, we'll relocate them. This land is under the purview of the Arizona Territory Charter. It's ours for the taking. Elara felt the blood drain from her face. This was not the man she was engaged to marry. This was a stranger, a predator. He wasn't looking for her, he was hunting. And her home, her family, they were stragglers to be relocated. Kyle looked at her, his face a mask of stone. He had heard it all. He had heard the name of the sickness. Your Silas has a dark heart, Kyle murmured. He's not, Elara began, but she couldn't finish. The illusion was shattered. The man she loved was a lie. They have found the entrance, Kyle said, his voice flat with a sudden, terrible urgency. They smell the water. They smell the silver. He looked at Elara, and his eyes were full of a new, terrifying decision. Your escape. You have just brought the end of my world. The trek back to the village was silent. Elara's mind was a whirlwind of shame, betrayal, and a new, cold anger. Kyle didn't march her back. He simply walked, and she followed. The power dynamic had shifted in a way she couldn't fathom. She was no longer a prisoner running from him. She was an accomplice running with him toward a disaster she had unleashed. They used a different, faster path, a series of handholds and narrow ledges that left her muscles burning. When they emerged into the pueblo, the harvest trance was fading. The first villagers were stumbling out of the kiva, rubbing their eyes. They found Malachi first, sitting on his prayer ledge, watching the sunrise. She ran, Kyle said, his voice void of emotion. Malachi's ancient face tightened. He rose, his owl feather cape rustling. The first path, then. It is the only way. The law must be— No. Both men stared at Elara. The word had ripped out of her throat. It was not a plea. It was a command. You, Anakite! You do not speak! Malachi hissed. My name, Elara said, stepping forward, is Elara, and I will speak. You call me witness. Well, I have witnessed. She pointed back toward the ridge. There are men. 12 of them. They are not ghosts. They are prospectors. They have repeating rifles. They are led by a man named Alistair Blackwood and another man. They know about this place. They call it ours for the taking. They say they will relocate you. They mean to kill you all. A horrible silence fell over the plaza. Tala had emerged, her face pale. Rorik, his head thick from the smoke, stepped out, his hand on his knife. She lies, Rorik shouted. It is a trick. She led them here. She is a spy. I did lead them here, Elara shouted back, tears of fury in her eyes. Not on purpose. The other man, Silas Croft. He was my fiancé. He used the maps I helped him draw. He is not looking for me. He is looking for silver. He is a liar and a thief, and he will burn this place to the ground to get it. She turned to Cale, her heart breaking. You were right. Your people are not the sickness. My people are, and I am the germ. I brought it to your door. She sank to her knees, the fight gone, replaced by a devastating emptiness. Do what you must. Take the first path, but do Do not let them. Do not let him win. Malachi looked at her, his ancient eyes seeing something new. Kyle stepped forward. He put a hand on Ilara's shoulder, not to comfort, but to steady. He looked at Malachi. She does not lie, Kyle said. I saw them. I heard their words. The Silas she speaks of is the leader of the wolves. They are at the mouth of the canyon now. The village erupted into panic. Women grabbed their children. Rorik and the other warriors grabbed their spears. We fight, Rorik yelled. We spill their blood on our sacred ground and die. Tala's voice cut through the noise. She stepped up to Rorik, her face fierce. You will fight rifles with spears? You will make widows of us all, you fool. Then we run, another said, to the high tunnels. And let them take the pool, the kiva, our homes, Malachi countered. There is a third way, Ilara said, her voice quiet. Everyone stopped. She looked up, her face stained with dust and tears. You cannot fight them, and you cannot run. So, you must haunt them. Kyle looked at her, a spark of understanding in his eyes. What do you mean? This place, Ilara said, standing up. You call it the Echo Canyon. You told me, Kyle, that it knows me, that it's a liar's ridge. You've spent centuries using this canyon to hide. Now, use it to fight. Her botanist's mind, her scientific, logical mind, was finally, fully engaged. They are superstitious men, she said, her voice gaining strength. They're already worried about ghost stories. You will give them ghosts? Kyle, the acoustics, that chant you did. Where does it echo? Everywhere, Kyle said, from the high-speaking ledge. Good, Ilara said. Tala, the herbs, the ones from the kiva. Can they be burned to create more smoke? A lot of smoke? They can, Tala nodded. Rorik, Ilara said, turning to her tormentor. He looked at her, stunned. You're a hunter. Can you and your men move through these walls without being seen? Like the wind, Rorik said, grudgingly. Good. Then you will not be soldiers. You will be spirits. You will make sounds. You will start rock falls. You will use the tunnels to get behind them and in front of them. You will make them think the very stones are alive, and that 100 warriors are here. She turned to Malachi. You, lawkeeper. Your law of the witness was to protect the canyon's secrets. I am the witness. And I am telling you, the only way to protect it is to make those men run so fast they never speak of this place again, for fear of being called mad. A new law was being written. The unwanted echo had become the voice. Malachi stared at her for a long time. Then he did something that shocked the entire village. He bowed, a shallow, respectful inclination of his head. The law has been broken, Malachi said. So the law must be rewritten. The witness will lead the war. Kyle looked at Ilara, not with possession, not with anger, but with a new, burning respect. What do we do first, Anakite? Ilara took a deep breath. She was no longer a prisoner. She was a general. They are looking for silver, she said. We will give them dust. They are looking for stragglers. We will give them an army. Kyle, Rorik, let's go hunting. The plan was set in motion with a speed that spoke of a lifetime of disciplined, communal action. The Echo Canyon people, who had spent centuries honing the art of not being seen, now applied that skill to the art of being seen, everywhere at once. Ilara became the hub of the wheel. Kyle, take 5 men to the high ridge. You'll be the ones who start the rock slide. Not to kill, remember. To separate. We need to split Blackwood from his men. Make them small. Make them afraid. Kyle nodded, a brief, sharp gesture. Rorik stepped forward, his expression still surly, but now tinged with a grudging focus. "You and your fastest runners," Ilara commanded. "You take the lower tunnels. You are the ghosts. You will use blowguns, not poisoned darts. I want thorns, something to sting, to make them believe the air is attacking them. And I want you to dip arrows in that phosphorescent moss from the lower caves. Fire them into the walls around them. Make them see spirits in the darkness." Rorik's eyes lit up. This, he understood. "We will be demons," he grinned. "Tala," Ilara continued. "The smoke. We need it at the canyon entrance. A wall of it. They must enter through a cloud." "It will be done," the older woman said. Ilara stood, her mind a flurry of logistics, physics and psychology. She knew Silas. He was a coward. He was driven by greed, but his courage was thin. Blackwood was the true threat, a man who had likely seen battle. He was the one they had to break. "And me?" Kyle asked, pausing as he gathered his ropes. Ilara looked at him. You are the canyon's voice. After the rock slide, you go to the speaking ledge. I want you to use that chant I heard. The one from the pool. Make it echo. Make them think their presence has angered a god." A strange, small smile touched Kyle's lips. "I was. You were the one who angered him." "Then let's give him his due," Ilara said, her own smile grim. Within an hour, the village was empty. The children, the elderly, and the infirm were hidden in the deepest, highest, safe-hold caves. The rest were an army of phantoms, melting into the canyon walls. Ilara and Kale took the final position on a high ledge overlooking the slot canyon entrance. Below, they could see Blackwood, Silas, and their 10 men staring at the canyon mouth. "It's just a crack," one of the men said, his voice nervous. "It's where the survey map ends," Silas said, his voice strained. "It must open up." "And that smoke?" the man asked, pointing. A thick, acrid grey smoke, courtesy of Tala's herb burners, was now pouring from the fissure. "Sulfur," Blackwood snapped, taking charge. "Volcanic activity, often found with silver and gold deposits. Don't be fools. Where there's sulfur, there's wealth. We go in." Blackwood, as Ilara predicted, was the iron spine. He led the way, his rifle ready. Silas, a man now clearly out of his depth, followed closely behind him, clutching a pistol. The rest of the men followed, one by one, into the smoky crack. Ilara waited. She counted. "All 12, she whispered. She looked at Kyle. "Now." Kyle gave a long, low whistle, the call of a hawk. It began. The prospectors emerged from the smoke-filled tunnel into the wider, but still narrow, canyon path. They were coughing, their eyes watering. "See?" Blackwood said. "It opens up, just like—" Crack, boom. From high above, Rorik's team, on Kyle's signal, released the trap, a carefully balanced pile of boulders. It wasn't a massive landslide, but a precise, terrifying explosion of rock. The boulders crashed down between the men, splitting the party in two. Blackwood, Silas, and 3 other men were on the inside. The other 7 were on the outside, trapped by a new wall of rock, their path back to the desert blocked. "What in God's name?" one of the trapped men screamed. "It's a trap!" another yelled. "An ambush!" "Hold your fire!" Blackwood bellowed. "It's a natural rock fall! Hold your nerve!" But his men were already losing theirs. Thwip, thwip, thwip. From the darkness, Rorik's thorns flew. They stung the men's necks, their hands. "Snakes! I'm bit!" one man shrieked, firing his rifle blindly into the shadows. The shot echoed, a deafening report that bounced from wall to wall, and then the chanting began. Kyle, now at the high-speaking ledge, began his song. It was the same low, guttural, powerful chant Ilara had heard at the pool. But now, amplified by the canyon's acoustics. It didn't sound like one man. It sounded like 100. It was a bellow, a roar, a promise of vengeance that came from everywhere. "Saints preserve us! What is that?" a man whispered. "It's the wind," Blackwood shouted, but he too was looking up, his face pale. "Look!" Silas pointed, his voice a terrified squeak. On the canyon walls, Rorik's team fired their glowing arrows. Green-blue symbols appeared in the darkness, runes of light that seemed to float in the air. The 7 men trapped at the back. They broke. They were not frontiersmen. They were diggers, hired guns from cities. They dropped their picks, their rifles, and they scrambled up the rock slide, desperate to get out, away from the ghosts, the chanting, and the thorns. They fled, screaming, back into the desert, not caring about silver, only about the cursed canyon. In less than 5 minutes, Ilara's plan had cut the enemy force in half without shedding a drop of blood. But Blackwood, Silas, and their 3 remaining men were now deeper in the canyon, and they were the dangerous ones. "Cowards!" Blackwood roared, firing his pistol at the fleeing men. "Croft, you 3, with me! We're trapped. The only way out is forward." The chanting stopped. An eerie, heavy silence fell. "He's right," Ilara whispered to Cale, who had silently rejoined her. "He's not running. He's coming." "He is coming to his end," Kyle said, his face dark. "They are in the anvil, the place of no escape." "Good," Ilara said, her eyes cold, "because I need to speak to my fiancé." The anvil was a box canyon, a dead end, and the place where the Echo Canyon people had, for centuries, trapped their prey. Blackwood and his remaining party stumbled into it, thinking it was a pass-through. When they saw the sheer 300-foot wall at the end, the realization hit them. "It's a trap, Blackwood," one of the men yelled, spinning around. "We're boxed in." As if on cue, a dozen of Kyle's warriors, led by Rorik, appeared on the rim of the box canyon, silhouetted against the sky. They didn't fire. They just stood there, watching. "So," Blackwood sneered, reloading his rifle. "The ghosts have skin. Get ready, boys. We'll fight our way out." "There is no need for fighting, Mr. Blackwood." Ilara's voice echoed in the canyon. She and Kyle stepped out from a fissure in the canyon wall, blocking the only entrance. They were, in turn, backed by Tala and 5 more warriors. The prospectors were surrounded. Silas's jaw dropped. He stared as if he had seen, well, a ghost. "Ilara," he whispered, his pistol wavering. "My God! Ilara, you're alive! These savages, they took you!" He took a step toward her, his face a mask of what he probably thought was relieved joy. "Thank God! I've been looking for you. I came for you." Ilara laughed. It was a cold, sharp, and entirely un-Ilara-like sound. "You came for silver, Silas," she said, taking a step forward. Kyle was at her side, his spear held lightly, his eyes locked on Blackwood. Ilara was unrecognizable. The woman Silas had known was a memory. This was a woman forged in the canyon, dressed in buckskin, her blonde hair braided with leather, her face streaked with the same white clay Kyle had worn. What are you talking about?" Silas stammered. "And what are you wearing?" "These are the clothes of my relocators," she spat. "I heard you, Silas. I heard it all. Ghost stories. Stragglers. You were never looking for me. You were using my maps to rape this land." "Ilara, no, you don't understand. I understand perfectly," she said. "You are a liar, a thief, and a coward. Now, listen here, Missy." Alistair Blackwood began, raising his rifle. Before he could finish the sentence, Kyle's spear was no longer held lightly. It was a blur, thrown with impossible speed and accuracy. It flew from his hand, struck Blackwood's rifle, and pinned the metal stock to the wooden ammo crate the man was standing near. The rifle was ripped from his grasp, leaving him shaking, his hands stinging. The other 3 men dropped their weapons instantly. Blackwood stared at his empty hands, then at Kyle, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and respect. Well, I'll be damned. Only Silas was left, his pistol still aimed, his hand shaking so badly he could barely hold it. He was pointing it, not at Kyle, but at Ilara. Ilara, put down your... whatever, he stuttered. Come with me. We can leave. We can get married, just like we planned. Planned? Ilara said, walking toward him, her steps slow and deliberate. You planned to murder the people who saved my life, the people who took me in. Took you in? They kidnapped you. You're one of them. You're filthy. This was the final straw. The man she had loved, the man of intellect, was reduced to a spoiled, terrified child. Yes, Silas, she said, stopping just out of his reach. I am filthy with the earth. I am filthy with honor. I am filthy with a home. All things you know nothing about. I'll shoot you, Ilara, I swear. Don't make me, he sobbed, tears now streaming down his face. No, you won't, she said. You're a coward. You only attack the weak. You only shoot at stragglers. You won't shoot me. She stepped forward, and, with a swift, practiced motion, the same motion Tala had taught her for breaking dry branches, she slapped the pistol from his hand. It clattered to the rocks. Silas collapsed, a whimpering heap. It was over. Ilara turned to Blackwood, who was rubbing his hands. You will be escorted out. You will take that with you, she said, gesturing to Silas. You will leave your weapons, your maps, and your mules. And if I don't, Blackwood said, his bravado returning. Kyle spoke for the first time. If you don't, you will be left in the anvil. The sun is hot. The nights are cold. The canyon will have you. Blackwood looked up at the silent, watching warriors. He looked at Kyle. He looked at Ilara. Fair enough, he said. He kicked Silas. Get up, Croft. You're a disgrace. The prospectors were disarmed and marched, blindfolded, through the winding tunnels, a journey that took 3 hours, but deposited them only 2 miles from their original camp, confused, terrified, and utterly disoriented. Their mules had been relocated and set free 10 miles in the opposite direction. Silas Croft, still weeping, was shoved along by Blackwood. Ilara watched them go from a high ledge, her face impassive. She watched until their dust was a smudge on the horizon, swallowed by the desert. When she returned to the pueblo, the village was quiet. The warriors were cleaning their weapons. The women were not celebrating, but working, restoring the balance. Rorik was standing by the kiva. He watched her approach. He did not sneer. He did not mock. He took his knife, the one he had threatened her with, and pressed the hilt against his chest, bowing his head. You fight like a canyon lion, Ilara, he said, using her name. Your plan was good. My honor is yours. It was the highest praise he could give. Ilara simply nodded, accepting it, and walked on. She found Kyle and Malachi at the sacred pool, the place it had all begun. The water was still, the waterfall a gentle murmur. The law has been tested, Malachi said, his back to her, and it has been found incomplete. He turned. His cloudy eyes were clear. The law of witness was created to protect us, but it was a law of fear, a law of walls. You, outsider, you did not just see our world. You forced us to see yours, and then you forced us to save our own. You, Ilara, he said, are no longer Anakite. You are not the unwanted echo. You are Kinite. What does it mean? She asked. Kyle answered. his voice soft. The echo that answers. Malachi nodded. You are bound to this canyon, Elara. Not by Kael's word, not by my law, but by your choice, by the blood you did not shed. You are free. Elara looked at the old shaman. What does that mean? It means you are free to go, Malachi said. The path is open. We will give you water and food. You can find your San Francisco. Or you can stay. He looked at Kyle, then at Elara, and with a wisdom that spanned centuries, he left them alone. Elara stood by the pool, the turquoise water reflecting her new, strange face. She touched the clay. You are free, Kyle repeated, standing beside her. He was no longer her warden. He was just a man. Am I? Elara asked, looking at the water. Silas is gone. My old life. My maps. My dresses. My intellect. It was all a lie. A paper-thin world. He was a ghost. And what is this? Kyle asked. This, Elara said, touching the cold, solid rock wall. This is real. The stone. The water. The hunger. The work. The belonging. She turned to him. You told me, by your law, I belonged to you. Kyle's face was unreadable, but his eyes were alive. It was a mistranslation, spoken in anger. No, Elara said. I think you were right. I just didn't understand, and neither did you. She took a step closer to him. The law said I belonged to the canyon. It said I was your charge, your shadow, your responsibility. Yes, he said. Well, Elara said, a small, true smile finally reaching her eyes. You have been very irresponsible, Kael of the Echo Canyon. You have taught me to fight, to think, and to lead. You have made me a demon and a lion. You have taught me to answer. What are you going to do with me now? Kyle looked at her, at this woman who had come into his world like a storm and remade it. The ritual he had been performing that day was for a new leader. He had thought his path was broken by her. He realized now his path had just begun. He reached out, not to grab, but to offer. He held out his calloused hand. The law is rewritten, Kyle said. You do not belong to me, Elara, and I do not belong to you. She placed her hand in his closed around it, warm and strong. We, Kyle finished, belong to the canyon, and it belongs to us, together. Elara gripped his hand, her choice made. She was not a prisoner. She was not a guest. She was home, and that's the story of Elara, Kael, and the Echo Canyon, a story of how a law can be broken and rewritten, and how a home isn't always the place you're born. It's the place you fight for. What did you think of Elara's choice? Would you have run with Silas, or would you have stayed to fight for the canyon? This story was a beast to tell, and if you enjoyed this journey into the Wild West, it would mean the world to us. Please, take a second to hit that like button. It's the call of the hawk that lets us know you're out there. Share this story with someone you think would love a good drama, and most importantly, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. We have so many more stories to tell, so many more worlds to explore, and we want you to be here for all of them. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.